Welcome, everybody. It is the 22nd of August. We are just moving into Virgo season today, and there's a new moon tomorrow. So, this is a powerful time to set intentions. And I'll be talking a little bit more about um, what Virgo season means, really. It's a great time for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere as we're moving into the autumn. Virgo season accompanies us in this movement, and it invites us to get organized, to purge the things that are no longer working for us, or the procrastination, the things that we are delaying, the changes that we're delaying making. And Virgo asks us to get very organized and clear about what needs to go, what needs to be cleaned out, and what new habits are being called in. So today's lecture is inspired by this particular season that we're moving into. And before we head into that, bear with me, there's just someone else that's coming in. Before we head into the lecture, I just want to invite you to take a moment to sit quietly and breathe. It's lovely to see so many of you here today. So as we close down the eyes and take a few deep breaths, just preparing the inner conditions. See that your spine is straight, your chest open, welcoming in this day and welcoming in each other into this space. Your paths may not have crossed here before, but just recognizing the presence of these other beings who are on this path as well. This is our Sangha, this is our community. Notice what state you're in, and notice how you're showing up to the session today without any judgment. And then taking a deep inhalation and a deep exhalation, and just slowly beginning to activate your senses once again. Coming back into this virtual space that we're sharing. Welcome back. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start exploring this principle of Saucha. So in the previous lectures, we have gone through some of these yogic principles, the yamas and the niyamas, from tapas to svadhyaya. We've explored these different principles or qualities that we are invited to cultivate and develop on the spiritual path. And Saucha is another one of those. And the direct translation is purity, practicing purity. But I also feel like it's very much part of the preparatory period that we pass through, let's say, the first few chapters of our spiritual journey, preparing the conditions in order to receive higher and higher forms of consciousness, forms of comprehension and understanding about ourselves, the universe, life, spirit. So we're going to explore this principle together. Saucha is one of the first niyamas in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, often translated simply as purity or cleanliness. I'm just going to get my notes up here. Hopefully you're still seeing the screen and not all my notes. Do let me know. The body is considered the vessel for spiritual practice, and cleanliness increases pranic flow, increases the flow of energy in the body and our health. But its meaning is much richer and multifaceted, spanning the physical, mental, energetic, ethical, and even metaphysical domains. So in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he says that through the practice of purity comes clarity of mind, cheerfulness, mastery of the senses, and fitness for self-realization. So here he's already alluding to the fact that this is part of the preparation for our own self-realization. In the Bhagavad Gita, in this great epic text, purity in the body, in speech and mind is emphasized. So we're not just talking about cleanliness and hygiene, but rather a speech hygiene as well, a hygiene of the mind, mental cleanliness. It means purity of intention as much as physical cleanliness. So, sometimes these things are very obvious, but actually there's multiple levels of meaning. We all know that we need, to look after our physical cleanliness and hygiene, but then we need to take this further into our mental hygiene, our emotional hygiene. In all spiritual texts and teachings, the body is seen as a sacred vehicle for the soul. The body is anatomically and energetically a perfect design, but it is mortal. And so we're always having to balance this, our degree of investment in the body, recognizing that at once it is a vehicle to express the divine, but at the same time, it's mortal. And so we mustn't become obsessed with the physical body like we're seeing today, the amount of beauty products and surgeries that are happening, and all of this kind of manipulation of the body to achieve some kind of essentially unreachable goal of beauty, right? That's really taken it to the extreme. We have to come back into balance, obviously paying attention, taking care of the physical body, and at the same time recognizing that it is mortal. Mm-hmm. Learning how to love and respect the body, how to develop habits and practices that help us to take care of this temple, because to a great degree we have lost our understanding and knowledge of the body as sacred. And in order to reclaim this knowledge and sacred relationship with the body, we begin with our food, our breath, our movement practices, and how we use and direct our sexual energy. It requires a huge amount of energy for us to do our inner psychological work. All of us that are here are committed to that practice. We are committed to self-realization, to revealing the lies within us, the stories within us, to shine a light on the ego that is operating in the darkness. And in order to do that, it requires superhuman efforts. So much energy is required to do that. And in order to have that clarity of thought and mind, we need to remove all the things that are creating dullness in the body, that are suppressing our vital energy, that are causing contamination in the body, that are sapping energy from us, essentially, right? The body is a temple, and it has 3 altars, 3 channels through which spirit flows: the mind, the heart, and the sexual organs. And divine energy is concentrated in these spaces in a very unique and special way. And all of these temples require different types of nourishment and purification, different types of care. And that's what we're going to go into today. The physical body needs a certain type of food But the subtle bodies require a different type of nourishment. Our mind requires a different type of nourishment. Our sexual energy requires a different type of education and direction and nourishment to have a healthy use of our sexual energy, a healthy use of our emotional energy. So today's class is really quite practical. I'm going to move into now very practical steps that we can begin to consider as we are now moving into or preparing ourselves for the autumn, for this Virgo season. It's really a wonderful, wonderful time. Virgo accompanies us in this period of getting organized, getting prepared for the autumn, and getting very kind of practical about what it is, what are the things we need to do to move the needle. So starting with physical purity, which is one of the most, we could say, obvious meanings of Saucha, cleanliness of the body, bathing, hygiene, caring for the skin, the hair, our clothing, and our surroundings. Using clean, fresh foods, a sattvic diet, avoiding toxic or stale substances, including whole foods, real foods in your diet. And then a purity in your environment, decluttering, natural surroundings, keeping one's living space in harmony. Energetic purity, cleansing the nadis so that prana can flow smoothly. So we can do that through practicing pranayama, through chanting mantras or meditation, through avoiding environments, people, and habits that pollute one's subtle bodies. And as I go through these lists, ideas may come, or you may begin to recognize where some refinement could be happening in these areas of your life. Spending time in nature to recalibrate your energy, and guarding or protecting your prana, your this very sacred energy that you have, by avoiding gossip, excessive stimulation, or company that drains you, people that drain you. Those people that when you come away from a conversation with them, you feel like you're just sapped of energy. Right? These are all ways in which we can begin to pay attention to how we are protecting our energy, saving it for the work that really matters. Mental purity. So, using mindfulness meditation or self-inquiry practices to purify our thoughts, perceptions, and emotions. Journaling practices to notice where there are repetitive, unwholesome thought patterns that cause us suffering or cause us to stay in a loop. And taking time to cultivate the virtues of the heart, such as gratitude, kindness, compassion. These are practices. They are part of our nature. They are our most natural way of being, but we have been paying far more attention on practicing other states of being, such as anxiety or stress. So we've become very good at those other ways of being. And it's important for us to come back to those virtues of the heart and practice them, whether that's through a gratitude practice every day, through choosing kindness, choosing compassion. At the beginning, it can feel perhaps forced, or it can require a lot of effort until it just becomes who you are, and not a habit or a discipline, but rather how your being is expressing in the world. Speech purity. So this is one of my focal points where I've centered a lot of my work is on the power of the voice and using the voice as an instrument. Words are vibrations, and impure speech harms others and oneself, gossip, lies, harsh criticisms are believed to be impurities of the tongue. And so we need to learn how to use this instrument, whether we use it as a weapon or as a tool for peacemaking within ourselves and within our communities. So we need to practice speaking truthfully, kindly, and only when necessary. This is another interesting one, right? To understand when we are called to speak and when we are called to be silent. And that's also requires a lot of discernment to know when the person in front of you is able to receive your truth, receive your self-expression, and hold a space for you, a deep space of listening, so that that conversation or that dialogue can occur, or whether the person in front of you is not yet able to receive and hold that space for you. Other ways that we can practice speech purity are by not interrupting others, by practicing deep listening, practicing silence, and using mantra japa. So again, this is returning to the practice of chanting mantras to align our voice with words of peace, words of compassion, words of forgiveness, and to quieten the flurry of thoughts. Using mantra is a wonderful way, meditation in action, to really harness the power of the voice. Ethical and relational purity. We do this through cultivating transparent and respectful relationships and paying attention to the intention behind our actions. Are there any hidden motives? And we can do this by asking ourselves, am I acting from love and truth or from my ego? We can keep company with people who uplift us rather than pollute the mind. We can do this through simplifying our commitments in order to create more spaciousness and time for a spiritual life, and practicing living in integrity with Mother Earth. So these are all very practical ways that we can practice saucha in our lives, practice purity through paying attention to our speech, our mental health, our emotional health, taking care of the temple of the body and the altars within the body, the altar of the mind, the altar of the heart, the altar of the sexual organs. Here is some, this is kind of a summary of integrating Saucha in daily life. So developing a morning routine. This is a wonderful time with Virgo season to develop a morning routine, especially if you feel like your morning routine has become a bit stale or could do with an injection of energy and inspiration, where connection with water is important, some form of washing the body, the skin, and you know, when you're in the shower, really connecting with the cleansing element of the water. You can even offer your thanks to the water, connecting with the element itself, giving thanks when you're in the shower. Movement, having sunlight, super important to expose your eyes to the morning sun, and fresh food will help all your subtle bodies. Mindful environment, so looking, perhaps considering the space that you inhabit each day, and you know, considering whether there's a way to declutter, to invite more natural light into your space and have these reminders of the sacred within your home space, whether they are simple altars, whether you work with plants and flowers or fresh herbs, candles, Paying attention to these small things can really change your home environment and create a refuge for you, a space where your home is a place to recharge and enter into a field of peace that is going to help you be in the world more consciously. Digital Saucha, so, limiting toxic media. Notice when you are in a loop of watching the news, of, getting hypnotized by these stories, by the illusion. The mainstream media really has so many of us hypnotized into a loop of stress, anxiety, one catastrophe after another, one drama after another. We have these clowns, these characters in our political system who are drawing so much of our attention in such a negative way. We have to cut that cord with them, because there is nothing beneficial about us giving them our attention, our frustration, our rage. They form part of the lie, of the illusion. And we need to get very clear about where we are placing our attention and what we are taking in via social media and television. So, many of us have to use social media for our work, but I really encourage you to curate very carefully what you are looking at. Speech, purity, paying attention to your speech, not only to what you say externally, but to those voices internally. And if you are going to express externally, is what you have to say kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Practicing emotional hygiene, whether that's meditation, therapy, journaling, and then relationships, really getting very discerning about who you surround yourself with, what kind of company you keep. Obviously, for some of us, our work situations oblige us to, be surrounded by people that we may not choose to hang out with outside of work. But there's always, we can always find the light in people that we find difficult or challenging. There's, they are there as tests for us in this work. If there's someone in your life that's challenging, that feels that it's a toxic relationship that you cannot avoid or step away from at the moment, use it as a training ground. Use it as best you can to develop compassion, kindness. And so where is all of this leading? The practice of Saucha leads us to experience Ojas. This is one of the most beautiful and subtle concepts in yogic and ayurvedic philosophy, and it carries many layers of meaning. It is often translated as vital essence, radiance, or the sap of life. It is the hidden nectar that flows through the body. It sustains life, immunity, love, and spiritual awakening. I'm not sure if my pronunciation is completely correct, huh? I'm pronouncing it in the Spanish way, Ojas. Ojas, it may well be Ojas. I don't know if anybody here, does anybody here know the correct pronunciation? No? Okay. It emerges when the temple of the body, the temple of the mind, and the temple of the heart have been cleansed through practicing Saucha. When Ojas is balanced, you radiate life and glow from within. So these qualities begin to emerge as we cleanse, as we purify on these different levels. I love this image of a nectar, a hidden nectar that flows through the body. And it's a gift, it's a treasure that we have within us to be experienced, to be lived. But again, we need to prepare the conditions in order for this nectar to flow. It is there, but perhaps we're experiencing it maybe only 10%, 20%, or it comes and goes. And so the idea is to really prepare in the best way that we can the terrain so that we can have clarity of thought, so our decisions, our actions, our speech is all aligned in order for this nectar to flow. Any questions or comments or reflections on what we've seen so far?
I have a question, Tara.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, you were describing sort of the three channels of the mind, the heart, and the sexual organs through which spirit flows.
Yeah.
We're describing how each one needs a different type of direction and nourishment.
Yeah.
So what we have been through just now, is that sort of should I regard all of that as collective, that collectively practices from each of those aspects, whether it's practices around mental purity or speech purity, but collectively they will give the nourishment to those three channels? Or is it that certain ones will specifically give the nourishment to specific channels? Because I can understand some for the mind more specifically, some for the heart more specifically. But yeah, so I was just kind of wondering whether there's a distinction there.
Yeah, I mean, all of them will be informing and nourishing. You know, when you work on the mind, let's say when we work to cleanse the mind, we um, that clarity that comes will then also inform how we're, let's say, nourishing our sexual energy because we're becoming clearer about where we have abused or misused our sexual energy, right? So I haven't actually spoken directly about the sexual energy in this presentation because there is actually a whole other chapter called Brahmacharya, right, which is a within the yogic principles, which specifically deals with how we are nourishing and taking care of our sexual energy. And it's obviously a very broad topic, but I can give you some examples. So, for example, adultery, right, is a misuse of our sexual energy. Um, you know, using the sexual act as a form of prayer is a way that we can place that purity of intention when we come together with a partner, moving into the practice as a prayer. You know, that's a way that we can nourish that space and transform it so that rather than draining us, the sexual act actually, it feeds us and nourishes us. But we've become, especially regarding sexual practices, we have been so misinformed by Hollywood, by, the whole romantic, coming together with this, there's been so much hypnotization. I mean, now, what's happening in the porn industry, for example, it's such a distortion of how we should use the sexual energy. However, the information is there and it comes to us individually when we're cleansing the other temples, right? When we're cleansing the mind, when we're cleansing our energetic channels, when we're cleansing our prana, we begin to receive information about how that very, because the sexual energy is literally creation. It is literally the creative energy. We begin to receive more and more information about purifying those spaces. So what I would, in summary, what I would say is that all of the things that I've mentioned are ways that we can begin to prepare the terrain to receive higher and higher forms of knowledge and consciousness that will inform all aspects of our life.
Thank you. That's clear.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I just included this here because I thought it was a useful visual in regards to, developing new habits and to continue advancing, using the spiral and the loop as these symbols. The spiral or your intuition calls you to make gradual changes in your life that lead towards ongoing evolution, development, and transcendence. Pure consciousness can see the past, the repeating cycles of the mind, and urges you to move beyond what you think you know. The loop representing the ego, wanting us to stay in a loop, repeating the same cycle over and over again. This is what feels comfortable and safe to the egoic mind, since this is all that it knows. And so, it may be interesting to connect with these symbols in your day-to-day life, even just have an image of a spiral on your wall or on your altar to remind you, to keep expanding outwards, moving outwards, expanding outwards, and making those 1% changes every day, those 1% changes that change the course of your life in the direction that you want to go in. So we're going to finish with a journaling practice. And I just want to honor the source of these questions. Attune to the Moon is an astrology channel that I follow. I've slightly adapted the questions to our needs, to this work that we're doing here. But I want to give us about 20 minutes to work through these questions together. And then at the end, I would love for us all to respond verbally to the group in response to the number 10 question, right? So let's take a moment here, 20 minutes to work through these questions.